What are the five biggest questions I see in the climate and energy issue? I've thought this through, and here's my five, and a little idea of what I think answers might be. The first one: how can we accelerate the conversion of energy sources from fossil fuels to renewable power faster? We all know that coal, oil, and gas power plants already exist, and wind turbines and solar energy and bioenergy are developing. My first thought on this is that there are a lot of tax subsidies and tax credits given to the fossil fuel industry that we should eliminate. We shouldn't be encouraging the marketplace financially to continue to use these fossil fuels. We could go as far as a carbon tax that would penalize carbon emitting energy, but the first step is simply to quit giving them tax subsidies that cost every taxpayer money. And this is true in every country of the world, not only the United States. Second question: how can we encourage less use of cars for single passenger transportation? I think the biggest factor in getting people out of their cars is by providing attractive alternatives to driving. I saw just the other day that the bike and walking path here in Missoula put up a counter to see how much people were using this walking path, and it counted 500,000 people going by in 1 year. In 1 year, 500,000 people tripped that counter. Clearly, that shows that when you build an attractive place for people to walk and bike, they will use it. And I think that's the first step of encouraging less car use. A third question: how can we design our cities to be more efficient and less vulnerable to natural disasters, weather-related disasters? A few things we have to pay attention to. Probably the first factor is making better use of our stormwater management so that when there's a heavy rainstorm, it doesn't generate flooding. And in Montana, that's not so much of an issue. In other parts of the country, it's a very big issue. That right now we just route stormwater as quickly as we can into pipes, and it just accelerates the runoff to flooding. And we know how to design landscapes to soak up that water rather than just pipe it into pipes. And the other major disaster potential I'll point out for Montana is wildfire. And I think what we need to be doing is around each of our cities in the wildland urban interface to be cutting fuels down so there's not so much to burn. That's really the only point of control we have of wildfires, is eliminating the fuels. We can't change the other factors. Fourth question: how do we vastly improve recycling of materials? We should really think that everything that we throw in the garbage can and goes to a landfill is a failure of our society to adequately use reuse that material. And this means encouraging different packaging, of things we buy at the store, so there's not so much waste packaging. Using much more in the way of refillable products, that we don't throw the package out beer and pop bottles are the worst. We use them once for about 5 minutes and then they're thrown away. What could be worse than that? And I think we need to work really hard at developing products to recycle plastics, certainly glass. We already do well with aluminum and copper and some of the valuable metals. But I think this is just a huge topic that we need to improve on. My final question is, you might say, rather theoretical, but I think it's fundamental to the future of humanity, and that simply is, how will humanity develop a means of global governance? We have something like 190 countries. How do we get collective action for the things needed to combat global warming from all of these countries? Now, the unfortunate truth is I had some ideas for these other questions, but I just have no idea on this one. We see regularly the United Nations is not adequate in terms of global governance, and yet it's the best thing we have today. I really don't know how we can improve the cooperation of countries worldwide, but with a planetary crisis like climate change, we have to have a planetary solution, and it seems we have to have some sort of planetary governance. And I find that I don't think we can get to the end of the century without some sort of improved global governance, and I wonder what that can ultimately be. All right, those are my 5 questions, and at least a bit of an answer from me.